so that they can try to those who don't understand it or don't know about it, they'll look down on it as soon as they hear about it.
Haitian Vodou emerged in the 1600s within communities of enslaved Africans who were forced to the island of Hispaniola, which is today two countries, Haiti on the western third and the Dominican Republic on the eastern two-thirds. People from all over West and West Central Africa were forced to Caribbean plantations. Some of the largest populations that ended up on Hispaniola came from the regions roughly around modern-day Benin and western Nigeria, including the Fon and Ewe people, as well as various Yoruba-speaking ethnic groups. Congo communities from Central Africa also played a significant role in Haiti's demographic makeup. To this day, Vodou practitioners speak of their ancestral homelands in Africa as Guinea, and this is a major part of their mythology and practice. As you'll see throughout this video, many of the terms for spirits and practices within Vodou derive from African language and culture. France gained control of the western third of Hispaniola in 1659 and formed the colony Saint-Domingue. This quickly became one of France's most profitable and most brutal colonies, producing the raw goods that helped to build European wealth and infrastructure. By the late 17th and early 18th centuries, hundreds of thousands of Africans were enslaved in this colony, who continued their religious traditions from their homeland, increasingly blending with Catholic Christianity. As we'll examine later in this video, some of this blending occurred from Africans who brought Africanized versions of Catholicism from the continent. After all, Christianity had already been introduced to West Central Africa centuries before by the Portuguese. But this blending also occurred by force under the colonial rulers, especially in 1685 when King Louis XIV issued the Code Noir, which set rules for the treatment of enslaved people and also decreed that missionaries should try converting them to Christianity. Vodou played a major role in throwing off colonial rule during the Haitian Revolution. On the night of August 14th, 1791, a group of enslaved Africans met at Bois Caillaman, or Alligator Forest, for what has been variously described as both a political rally and a religious ceremony led by a Vodou priest, Dati Boukman, and priestess Cecile Fatiman. They made an offering of a wild boar to the spirits and made a blood pact to win their freedom. Historians have described this night as the start of the Haitian Revolution. War broke out all over the colony, and over a decade later, the rebelling captives finally won their freedom, declaring their independence on January 1st, 1804. The Haitian Revolution was the only successful slave revolt in Atlantic history to have resulted in the establishment of a new nation and a black republic. Since independence, African-derived beliefs and practices have held a precarious position in Haitian society. In 1814, the second president of Haiti outlawed many Vodou practices. However, more recently, in 2003, the newly elected Haitian president and former priest, Jean-Bertrand Aristide, controversially decreed Vodou as an official religion of Haiti, along with Catholicism. Nevertheless, Vodou practitioners today are in conflict with a growing population of evangelical Christians, who characterize Vodou practice as demonic and cast the Bois Caillaman ceremony as a blood pact with Satan instead of a proud national story. Haitian Vodou itself has spread outside of Haiti as well. According to some scholars, Little Haiti and Inner Miami remains the densest concentration of Haitians outside of Haiti. Some estimate that around 200 Vodou priests and priestesses live in South Florida. Boston, New York, and Montreal have also become centers for Vodou practice because of their large Haitian immigrant populations. Some of these congregations have even been attracting converts from other populations, including practitioners of new religious movements like Wicca. So there's a basic history, but what about the basic beliefs of Haitian Vodou? In Haitian Vodou, there is one supreme God called Bon Dieu, French for the good God. Since there are a lot of points of contact between Vodou and Catholicism, many Haitians equate Bon Dieu with God the Father in Catholic theology, he who created the universe. But the primary way Vodouisans interact with the divine is through a pantheon of spirits called Lois. So who or what are the Lois?
The Lois are divine energies. They are principles, they are entities that guide the world forward. And I think that, historically speaking, yes, they have been described as saints. That's not entirely wrong, but it's also really not entirely correct. The Lois are energies often of nature and also of the human realm. They work with and under Bon Dieu in Haitian Vodou. Bon Dieu is God, the supreme God. And if you will, underneath, but also in tandem with God, are the Loa, who are the ones who interact most intimately with humans. People don't typically pray to Bon Dieu except to ask for just, magnificent strength, in times of great desperation and need. Vodouisans are more often interacting with the Loa. And sometimes they will refer to them using different terms. And I think these different terms are really illuminating. So sometimes they'll refer to them as Saint-Yo, the saints. Sometimes they'll refer to them as Mystère, as mysteries. Sometimes they'll refer to them as Invisible, the invisible ones. All of these terms are accurate.
So the Loa are spirits, and they also go by other names derived from Catholic terminology, such as saints or angels. The Loa fall under several categories, or nations. The prominent nations of Loa are the Rada, the Petuo, and the Gede. The Rada nation are the ancestral spirits associated with vodun spirits from Benin. Some prominent Loa in this nation include Papa Legba, the gate opener, Don Bala, a spirit represented by a serpent who is considered a kind and loving spirit and often called upon for help, and Ezilifreda, a Loa of femininity, womanhood, sexuality, prosperity, and fortune.
Is that he then reverts to indigenous religion again. He goes back to his ancestral religion. But he has two sons who battle over the kingdom. These two sons battle over the kingdom after his death in the early 1500s. And one of his sons, to become representing indigenous religion, loses the battle to his brother who represents Catholicism. The brother has become converted, and in 1509, King Afonso I converts the kingdom of Congo to Catholicism. What does that mean? That means that Central Africa has been blending Catholicism with ancestral religions for 500 years. What takes place is an Africanizing of Catholicism.
So, Haitian Vodou, in part, is the result of the Africanizing of Catholicism, and Africa is central to Vodou identity and heritage. The name African diaspora religion draws our attention to what it means to practice a religion in the Americas, knowing that your ancestors were from Africa.
Some people are more familiar with the notion and concept of Jewish diaspora. And so it's helpful to understand that diaspora very much is about memory. And so people who are in the Caribbean, people who are in Latin America, people who are in the United States, and who are involved in these traditions, oftentimes are thinking about Africa cosmologically as an important icon. That's exactly what historian of religion Charles Long explains. Africa serves as symbol, as metaphor, as homeland, not for every African descended community in the Americas, but for many.
So for the...
Yeah, I had to play that whole thing. It's really good. I'm sorry. Hopefully y'all learned something. I want to read some comments. Where did I stop earlier? Let me see. It says, I really like this one. Dr. Daniels is simply captivating and really passionate about the subject. I'm usually not one to ask for content, but I would love to see you talk about Spiritism and its success in Brazil, and maybe about Umbanda later on, a uniquely Brazilian religion from the 1930s. I ask only because you're the best on the platform. Thanks. Let me read some more. As a Dominican, this is so nice to watch. We don't learn about this at all, despite the amount of Haitians that live here, and they're literally our neighbor country. We often just say their religions are of the devil, but we couldn't be more wrong. Thank you so much for this video. This guy is a Dominican. Let me read another one. It says, that's amazing. Haitian voodoo is really beautiful, and there's so much similarities to Afro-Brazilian candomblé. The rites are different based on the nations. Instead of Loa, the Hehe, Efan people nation has the Voduns. The Ketu Nagu Yoruba people nation has the Orixas or Orishas. The Angola Bantu people such as Congo, Ubandu, and Kimbundu nation has the Nikisi. Their dance offerings, the mounting. In Portuguese, we use the word incorporation. and tons of very similar aspects. Really interesting. Let me read some more. Great video. Could you do a video on Mexican indigenous religions getting mixed into their Catholicism? I think it could be an interesting topic. This was very well done. Love content on Africa and African diaspora religions. Thanks. Ayibobo, as an initiated voodoo saint, many videos don't do voodoo justice or even pronounce things right, let alone do all the research you did. Thank you. I'm telling y'all, this video is really good. You hear what these people are saying. It says, thanks for the introduction to much represented and misunderstood religion. Up to this point, my only introduction to this subject was William Gibson's sci-fi novels. Episodes like this, I hope, will bring greater understanding about people's cherished beliefs. Thanks, Andrew. I've learned a lot from this video. There's one more interesting cultural connection in Haitian voodoo to Poland, of all places. Twice in the video, at 151 and 715, we can see depictions of Loa, Elizabeth Dunter, I believe, that are clearly inspired by the depictions of the Virgin Mary in Catholic art, but they are specifically based on the Madonna of Czechoslovakia, icon from Poland. The mysterious double scars on her cheek being the most characteristic detail. At 5:30, we can see a painting by January Szydłowski depicting Polish soldiers fighting against Haitians. Recently, History with Hilbert made a video explaining the complicated story of how did Poles end up in Haiti as part of the French expedition in the final stage of the revolution, and while they were viewed much more positively than the French by the locals, in the end, some of them even staying and forming a community independent Haiti. In an independent Haiti. That's interesting. I never heard that, and I've done pretty good amount of studying. I think I remember a little bit, but I don't. Maybe it'll come back to me. I had to have heard this before, but right now it sounds foreign. But I don't disbelieve it at all. Super interesting. And then he's talking about based on the Madonna of Czestochowa, the Madonna of Czestochowa, icon from Poland. See, I never heard that before, but like the Black Madonna or whatever, I have. And that picture, when I was watching the video, that caught my eye too, and I noticed it. And they talk about the image of the Black Madonna and the Catholics having these same photos in there. Super interesting. How much of Catholicism is African? Let me read some more. It says, I'm doing a presentation on Vodou in my music history class, and I really appreciate this video. Many others has comments about inaccuracies and racism. I felt like I learned the correct things to teach my classmates. Thank you. When Dr. Kraya Malik Daniels refers to Vodou offerings as reciprocal instead of transactional, it hit me how that's a much less demanding word for it. I don't know how many have heard transactional to describe polytheistic practice. I give gods this thing, they give me blessings. But I feel like that's kind of a demeaning way to look at it. Classes try to explain Greek and other European pagan religions that way, and I feel that they might be a bit of convention from Christian historians and theologians who are demeaning these faiths either inadvertently or on purpose, trying to make it look more worldly and less divine. The use of the word reciprocal really makes it feel less like striking a deal and more like respecting one another. And I thought that was a beautiful sentiment towards polytheism. Another comment. Great job with this one. Would love to see more about indigenous Hispanic America similarly mesh Catholicism with indigenous beliefs to have the adoption of imported religion more palatable. Another comment that says, okay, but I absolutely love Dr. Kara's passion and energy. She reminds me of those cool teachers in school. You'd have to make you excited to learn something and get so invested in what you were learning that day. Love the religion for breakfast, but I'm switching to her class. In college, I did a research project on Beninois, Vodun, and Haitian Vodou, and it was so interesting. There were so many layers and nuances that I never would have imagined based on pop culture depictions. We're so ignorant to everything, but there ain't no there's no there's a reason for that. Let me read some more. It says, as a years-long fan of your channel and decades-long servitor, I was a bit nervous when I saw this episode pop up, but I want to thank you for doing such a beautiful job. I've learned something new, the history of Congolese Catholicism. I especially appreciate the comparison of Manheiwa with kosher and halal practices. I've been making that comparison for years and was so happy to hear someone else make that comparison and to share with a broad audience. Thank you. Hey, Bobo. Another comment. I've been following your channel for a long time. I'm astonished about the amount of research you put into all of your videos, especially this one. I was born and raised in Haiti and currently live in Miami. And I was raised Christian. Vodun was very taboo around my family circle. Thank you for acknowledging the current situation in Haiti and using your platform to help and educate others. There was another clip from the video that stuck out to me, is the part when he was talking about Miami, and it was showing how beautiful the city was, and they were talking about this a large amount of Haitians there. And I couldn't help but to, in my mind, like a tear shed in my inside, I was thinking that Haiti should look like that. And you think about all of the freaking resources. You know, Hispaniola was the most profitable colony, like ridiculous amount of money. And how did they build all that stuff? How did you think they built Europe, the Americas, the rest of this stuff? Come on, man. See, this stuff gets me emotional and it gets people mad when you mention it, but there's a reason why Haiti is so poor. The wealth is right over there in Miami. That shit should be, that's how Haiti should look. Anyways, let me move on before I just keep just going on and on that. They're kind of going over the same stuff. As someone involved in Candomblé and who also served the spirits, I'm very happy for this. Thank you for speaking about our spirituality with truth and respect. Messi Mezanmi Ayubobo. I love Dr. Daniel's passion. Never expected you to do a video on voodoo, but thank you. So everybody's just okay. Thank you, God, for this day. We have lived everything in our life, our health, our family, the guidance you have given us. Allow us guidance to the path of righteousness. Amen.
Really, I'ma get that bitch. Revenge is a dish best served cold. She took my son, now my soul is cold. He took my daddy, now my soul is old.